I drive down there.
Good evening. Today is Monday, May 13th, 2024. The MPO Citizens Advisory Committee meeting is called to order. Do we have anyone joining virtually?
No, just one of the consultants.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's everybody stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Thank you everybody for coming. Apologize for getting a 5-minute late start. We're here now, so we'll now open the meeting to the public comment. Do we have any public?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay. See you now. We'll move on. Got my prayer sheets here until I learn all this. You need to review them or review the meetings and meeting minutes from the last meeting. And does anybody have any discussion on the minutes? I did find one correction, and Lindsay's made that correction. There was an abbreviation for CAC that wasn't quite right. We got that done.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to approve the meetings? The minutes? Okay, second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have some action items. The first action item is 5A, fiscal year 2024, 25 through 28, and 29, Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, Ryan Brown.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, on an annual basis, we come back to you and bring you our transportation improvement program. Basically, our combination of projects that is brought forward by our local government as well as the state and their partners. The projects that we're looking to program in this time frame, 24 to 29. So with that being said, we worked with the department on scheduling projects and programming over the last year. It's based off of 2023's priorities, so it's almost retroactive 1 year. Those projects were programmed into a February download and April download. The April download is what you see in the document that's been provided to you. As of right now, the governor has not signed the budget, so this is still tentative, technically. Right, until things get moved around. We do have quite a few state legislative requests in our region. 11 were submitted, 9 or so were funded. Those might still have a chance to be vetoed. So about $25 million in our 2-county region was taken out for state appropriations. So those would have to come back out of our region, if not vetoed. So there will be still some reorganization. I can almost guarantee that prior to the June 30th deadline budgets on our end. But this tip is reflective of that. It also takes into account performance metrics and things that we're required to report on and how we arrived at these projects being our priorities and how they were programmed. So with that, I will take any comments you might have about the document itself or the projects within. Like I said, this is probably still going to be changed at some point, given the state's current process and where the budget stands statewide. So with that, I'll happily take any comments about the process, about the tip itself, or anything within it.
Any questions? Did anybody have a chance to look through it mostly?
Brian, is the governor able to line item veto particular projects?
Yes.
Goes down to that level?
As appropriations. So not as simple with the work program itself, right? Through our process, it has to go through multiple bodies, multiple things. But, you know, your lobbyists at your local level, counties and cities can go and make legislative requests to the House and Senate. Those work their ways through subcommittees. Once they're approved and taken into the budget, that is tentatively approved, but the governor does have line item veto power to remove any one specific project that was funded during the legislative session. So that can still happen. Like I said, approximately $25 million in appropriations to our 2-county region. That it's a net zero game, right? Once you get to the budget, it could be also a sweep where, guess what, if we don't get those projects funded and they get vetoed, we also lose $25 million in budget. So it could be a $50 million swing. So if there's risk involved with coming in and doing state appropriations. It's more immediate, right? You can get money funded in that current year. However, there is risk involved with that and the jurisdictions are aware of it. But there is a sense of instant gratification if you get your project funded in that process. So,
And have we had any projects vetoed like that in the past?
yes, we have. We've had many. This is by far, I will say, in recent memory, probably the last decade, this is the largest amount. And having conversations with the county, I think there's hope to step back in the next few years. I think we've asked for a lot in transportation. We have several members of our local representatives and senators that are in positions of current power, I would say, within their subcommittees, transportation subcommittees, et cetera. So they are able to move these things along faster. Once they are out of those positions, it's less likely we're going to be requesting at the scale in which we did, which was, I think the requests were over 50. So that's a lot to request. And when they come out the last few years, a little more historical context, came out of general revenue. This year, we ran out of general revenue. There was no general revenue surplus. The rest came out of the Transportation Highway Trust Fund, which is how we're funded, how the state's funding their work program. So it's a 1-to-1 split. So if you approve anything that's not in the work program through that process, it has to come out somewhere else. Typically, they'll dig right back into the area where the appropriation was granted. So that's just a little bit more on the general process of it.
He's known to sign a little late.
Yes. Historically.
That's what we've seen.
Yeah.
Do you think that is showing that he may do some line items?
Yeah.
And,
I would guess, yes.
yeah,
I mean, historically, can't tell you yet what the number is gonna be, but
right,
let's just say there's never been no vetoes. Let's
right.
just say that. So I think there will be some play there. I think the comparison will be, what's the request, right? And what is the total amount still needed? So some of them people will go in and ask for design money or PD&E with this huge lingering construction cost. With no plan to fund the remaining phases, then it becomes more complicated and probably more likely to veto if they don't have a strategy to fund the rest of the project. So at least that's the logical progression I think you would take, but still up for debate. It's kind of his and his office's decision.
Including with what was sent out, there was some addendums, right?
Yeah, and those are the amendments, we're gonna do those right after this one, but, so the reason we did this after is that we're still in the state's budget, we're in between the two tips, so a couple of those will go into the prior year's tip, and one of them will go into the next year's tip.
Okay.
So that's what those tip amendments are gonna help solve out.
Any other questions? So will we be approving
Just the tip document itself.
just the tip
right?
document?
Yeah.
Any further questions? Motion to approve or second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So this is the, next item is 5B, this is the amendments, right?
Right, these are the amendments that go on this year's budget. We had State Route 789 east of Sunset Drive to Bird Key. 2,129,476 was added to the construction phase. Then we have 15th Street East, 301 Boulevard East from 59th Avenue East to 56th Avenue Drive. This is a segmented project that we have segment 6, 7, and 8. So what has happened is we're pulling off the right of way on segment 6 and segment 8 and putting the right of way funds on design in segment 7. So because that is a new phase, it needed a STIP amendment. So we're putting $4,500,000 on the design, and that will be in this fiscal year.
Do we have a slide for this at all? I know we
And
didn't.
then
It's in the, and then you'll see where a tip deletion happens when we're pulling the funds off of segment 6 and segment 8. This is going to happen in the next tip. So all they're doing is having to cross through on that. Then we have project 4535631, which is US 41 transit signal priority for Sarasota and Manatee, also known as TSP. This is a new funding that's being added in for a demonstration. It's gonna be 454,500. And so since it wasn't in the current step, it has to be put in the current step in order for them to set it up for bid.
Yeah, I'll just add on 15th Street East, there is, moving parts, say.
Yes, it's kind of like this.
So really, this is a lot of like counting year over year. There's money in the wrong phases. We don't need right of way money right now. We need design money. They're redesigning portions of 15th Street East that needs to be moved into the current year to address that. There's also originally 3 segments. They realized it's much too expensive and much too large. They took the center segment and split that into 3 additional segments. What we're doing is recombining that to do the design for single segments instead of 6, 7, and 8. They'll be all designated under one segment to be able to do design that way. So complicated, it's continuing to move. We're just having to do a lot of accounting, creative accounting, I would say, on this to continue to make sure the money's in the right places for Manatee County and DOT to be able to deliver the project. So that's what a lot of this is. TSP specifically is referring to transit priority that we did our concept of operation study on back in 2022. That's a demonstration in 4 locations to say if the project works and it's delivered and we see reductions in delay, the increased throughput, we're able to kind of extrapolate that over an entire corridor. There'll be reason to be able to look at further investment for that implementation. So that's what that's accomplishing. I know we're a little bit behind. We're probably hoping to get it programmed or bid out by September.
We're actually trying to get that out earlier than that. They're really pushing. That's why I've been pushing on getting the actual tip.
Yeah, so that right there will program into this year and we'll be able to start moving forward. So.
And so we have a gap that's coming up between this fiscal year ends June 30th. The state year starts July 1st, but the federal funds don't start until October 1st. So probably at the next meeting, there's going to be more amendments because it's called rolling forward and taking the funds that were on this current year and moving them into the federal fiscal year.
This is around here, just out there, the 301 sort of, right? It's not far away.
It's right in front of us.
It's right out there.
That's right.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from basically 70 to 63rd. So if you go north up here, the full segment is from basically Televast all the way to 301. But what we're working on right now, what's affordable is that middle section.
But it's not a state road. So
That's why that's our.
SU.
And fully, follow that, it is fully funded by SU dollars at this point. So there is some local funds, tiny amount for utilities and some work like that, but the construction itself, design, PD&E that was already done, was all federally funded. Not being state.
Questions? Any other questions? Discussion at all? Okay, do I have a motion to accept or approve?
So move.
Second,
second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So, next item is an action item, that is item 5C. This is the Joint Transportation Regional Incentive Program, TRIP. And Ryan?
Yeah. So the Transportation Regional Incentive Program is a state-funded project program type similar to CP, which is the County Incentive Grant Program. Both are designated in District 1 through joint lists. We've learned in past years in history that there's not a lot of money in TRIP. It's about $8 million for the whole district, which is 11 counties. So not a lot of money to be spent in this project type. TRIP is a very simple way of saying these are large projects that have regional impact that connect to this, which is our interstate system. Those are the loose criteria, I would say, of the projects that are eligible. So you'll see most of these projects on here are relatively large requests and are typically looking at capacity or widening or some type of project like that. So we work with Charlotte County, Charlotte MPO and Bold TPO on these project lists. We do alternating, two different kind of handshake gentlemen's agreements, I would say, with the two counties. One, Charlotte County, until somebody's project gets funded, your project stays at the top of the list. Bold County, they rotate every year. So you'll see a Manatee, Sarasota, Polk transition every single year. That's obviously dependent on whether or not one of those counties has a project or not. We, for quite some time, have had quite a number of projects and quite expensive projects on this list. We still have had conversations with both counties on front of, we probably need to scale some of those back, phase them out a little bit more appropriately for the amount that's actually eligible in the county. We did have some success here last year. With trip funds, we did get a portion of Mox and Wallow. Second phase of Mox and Wallow was funded about $6.5 million of trip funds on that. So that caused the rotation to happen in Charlotte County and moved Sarasota County up to the first slot, Charlotte to the second. Similar follows to the county list. So these were both coordinated with representatives from Charlotte TPO and Bold TPO. We worked through these lists, came to this agreement based on what their feedback was. So with that, we're going to take this list hopefully to the board for approval to then be considered for trip funding in the next programming cycle. I will take any questions on the trip list.
Any questions?
Are the lists scored, Ryan, or?
They're purely on their order, right? The counties come to us and say, these are the order of our projects, right? Manatee County wants theirs in this order, Sarasota County wants theirs in this order. Both does the same thing, Charlotte does the same thing. Then basically they just sit there and rotate. So there are one priorities will rotate until this one gets funded. Fairly simple, not as in depth as our own internal priority list. They're scored on our priority list themselves. It's just for this funding type, it's just based on.
So Ryan, so when we see like, just to clarify, item one is Fruitville Road on this first list. And the other one from Oak is item one is the same, right? So that's what you're saying.
Correct.
So this list has kind of been coordinated
With the other two
with the other.
TPOs. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's such a small chair, we're kind of tentatively agreeing that if one of us gets it, the $8 million, it'll be this project. The DOT will go look at this list and there's $8 million to give. So I'll go say, well, these three MPOs agree this is the project, they get the money to share.
This is one, right? Gosh, I see.
Fairly simple.
Now, is this tied to the state funding at all?
Yes, this is the state funding source, yeah. It's not our discretion, they're submitted for applications, there's a separate trip application, they submit to the state goes and evaluates programs where they think it's appropriate.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, do I have a motion to accept or approve this?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, action item 5D, public participation plan. Grace is going to present.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm the Public Involvement Coordinator at the MPO, and I am going to give a quick overview of the 2024 Public Participation Plan. So the Public Participation Plan is a federally mandated document that guides the MPO's public involvement efforts, and it has to be updated every 3 years and go out for public review and comment 45 days before adoption by the board. The PPP includes an outline of the plan with the MPO's objectives and goals for public involvement. A toolkit for techniques and strategies, and an evaluation of the MPO's tools and strategies that we used to determine what is effective and then make improvements for what is not. The plan also includes the MPO's Title VI and Limited English Proficiency Plan, or LEP short. The intent of the LEP is to ensure access to the planning process and information published by the MPO where it is determined that a substantial number of residents in Sarasota and Manatee counties do not speak or read English proficiently. Okay. So there are several updates and changes to the PPP. I'm just gonna go over 3 of the major ones. So the MPO improved and added new public outreach tools such as Active Campaign and Eco Interactive, which is an interactive tip. The MPO website went through a redesign that launched in April 2023 to make it more user-friendly. And since the website update, 2 other MPOs reached out to us to compliment the new website and ask for guidance on how to improve theirs. And then the Title VI and LEP now, the update now reflects data from the 2021 American Community Survey 5-year estimates. And you still have opportunities to make a comment on the plan if you have any. On the screen are ways to do so. And you have until May 20th at the MPO board meeting during the public comment period section of the meeting, and then it will be hopefully adopted by the board. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. So I guess after this, there was another email that came out with a survey, right? That we can all participate in. I know I sent it around to everyone on you.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a part of this public participation plan or not?
It's not directly a part of the plan, but surveys are a part of the plan.
Right.
The other 2P survey is actually part of the long range transportation plan update, which is a different update that's going on.
Okay.
But please take the survey if you
Yes.
haven't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody else? Okay. I guess we need to approve this or accept it, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the action plan?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Sometimes I wonder if I know that there's so many committees, I in my mind am still learning where everything fits, so bear with me when I ask silly questions or whatever. Okay, item 5D, no, that was just 5E. Florida Gulf Coast Trail Letter of Support. Nina.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Nina Fester, Senior Planning Manager here. The action that we're asking you today is to recommend and for the board approval of a letter of support that we're bringing to the board on Monday as part of the consent agenda. So this is specifically for the Gulf Coast Trail. On March 27th, the Florida Greenways and Trails Council, there's so many committee titles, I can't keep up with them. The Florida Greenways and Trails Council voted to re-rank the state's 14 regional trail systems. The Florida Gulf Coast Trail is one of those systems. It's the first time that the council has re-ranked the trail system since it was started maybe about 10 years ago. And the reason why these trail systems are significant is because FDOT incorporates those 14 trail systems as part of the Sun Trail system, for which there's a bucket of funds associated with. So jurisdictions can apply for Sun Trail funding to pursue projects that are part of the Gulf Coast Trail. So on March 27th, when the council re-ranked the trail systems, the Florida Gulf Coast Trail ranked number 4 of 14, which is a pretty decent number. And their rationale was to keep in the top 3 positions, top 2 positions, those trail systems that are largely completed, and the top two are in the 90% somewhere, whereas the Florida Gulf Coast Trail is about 40% completed at this time. So we thought that this would be an ideal opportunity to reaffirm local support for the Gulf Coast Trail by having the board approve this letter and sending it off to the council. At the March 27th meeting, one of my key takeaways was that seeing local support from the local jurisdictions and local stakeholders was very important for the council as they evaluated the trail systems, which FDOT takes into consideration when they take a look at the trail systems to be funded. So what we are looking for is a recommendation for board approval of this letter of support for the Gulf Coast Trail. And I'm happy to take any more questions. There's a lot that goes on with trails.
Yeah.
So the Gulf Coast Trail, lengthwise compared to the two that are ranked 1 and 2, are they about the same? Or are they?
I couldn't tell you how long the other two are. I know the Gulf Coast Trail is about 420 miles,
400?
and it's the longest regional trail system in the state.
From where to where?
It runs from Pinellas, Hillsborough, all the way down to Collier County. It's 7 counties in total, of which we are 2.
Is it connected? Is it done?
Not yet.
No,
We're about 40%.
40%. And where were we ranked before? We're 4th now. And it's re-ranking.
So historically, we've heard lots of numbers, right? I think this is the first definitive re-ranking, where I would say they've actually taken stands and said these are the order of the 14. We've heard before, 2 ahead of us are coast to coast. It's been around for years, at least. They've been working on it. The other is St. John's up in Jacksonville. The other is the Center State Loop, right? Third one. Yeah, so those 3 have been around for quite some time. More interestingly, I think is the Collier to Polk Trail, which was brought up during legislative session, which many of you probably have recently heard about. That's probably a much more legislatively run decision. There's about $20 million for just PD&E funded to evaluate the viability of a trail in the eastern part of our region and basically up the center of the state from Collier County up to Lake and Polk area. So that's another trail. I believe that was a fit. So we're kind of smack dab in the middle there. I think we want to reaffirm our position and simply state that we're a very populous, growing region that could use more connected trail facilities. I think that's the message that we're trying to get across. And going out and evaluating brand new systems at the cost of potentially a system that's going to serve many, many people in the growing area. And some of the best resources in the state that you can visit is a great selling point. So we want to continue momentum. They're certainly going to finish the other 2 trail systems. They're still going to see large investment in coast to coast and St. John's. We'd like to see ourselves up, a little bit further, maybe up there.
Not getting any cheaper to build here.
Nina, is the part of the trail from the causeway to the Green Bridge just going to be a bike lane, or is there something more planned beyond that?
To qualify for subtrail funds, it has to be at least 12 feet wide, paved, and entirely separated from the roadway. So a good example is the Legacy Trail, which is part of the Gulf Coast Trail, or the Pinellas Trail up in Pinellas County. So that's to qualify for the funds. FDOT does allow very short half-mile segments if it's not possible to meet those eligibility requirements. They do allow some exceptions, but by and large, it should be 12 feet paved, entirely separated.
So you're kind of planning 12-foot wide, paralleling Route 64, Mentee out from the causeway over to the Green Bridge?
So in May of last year, we adopted a trail alignment study, and the alignment goes off of 64. So from 64 and 75th, it heads south and kind of meanders through that neighborhood, and then it goes back into downtown. Yeah.
Thank you.
So actually, the map that's online does not reflect that change, but that is part of the central system.
Thank you.
So these big trail programs, is the funding that we get from the state only for the alignment? Does it also include some money for connecting small sections of connecting trails to hook up to it?
For the Suntrail system specifically, or the Suntrail funding
The
specifically?
Suncoast funding, is it only for the main line trail or is it?
It's only for the main line.
Okay, so the individual counties, park districts, cities have to come up with the funds to connect a local trail to that, okay.
So the Gulf Coast Trail is part of our long range transportation plan by way of the active transportation plan. So the active transportation plan, we use the Gulf Coast Trail as the spine of the active transportation plan. But then we're also looking at bike ped connections to and from the trail, as well as to transit and other things. So there are MPO funds available for those sorts of connections.
So do I understand, like, you could have the Sun Trail 12 feet wide, running through, maybe several miles through a county. And then maybe a particular developer develops an area and he only puts in an 8-foot wide. That could still connect for connectability, but it would not meet the requirements of the Sun Trail.
Right.
Longboat Key has a multi-use path.
Correct.
It's only like 6 feet or 7 feet wide
Yeah,
or something.
and that is part of the discussion, right? It's the alternate side, right? The west side, looking at Longboat, where it is a Sun Trail route, it's recognized as a Sun Trail route, because it's quite frankly the only road, 789 literally you can go down, right? To have a trail on Key. So, yes, right, the eligibility standards have also changed over the years. It wasn't always 12 feet, 8 feet used to be good. Now 12 feet is kind of the standard, and we find ourselves, I mentioned, it's increasingly more expensive to go and find right of way and build 12-foot trails everywhere. That's why we're happy to see, you mentioned a small investment. I think it's still relatively small, right? $50 million. It used to be 25 for the whole state. It's not a whole lot of money. 25 million wasn't getting you very far in terms of building trails statewide. Happy to see that it's at 50 now with a kind of one-time influx last year of 250 million. So the money's being spent. There is forward momentum and progress in trails. But your point, it is expensive, and it's, we're trying to utilize the things that we've already built and kind of have out there, and then matching it with the new standards that are being tried.
Too bad they wanted more than 10 feet, because if they kept it at 10 feet, it would potentially be exempt from sort of permit.
They're like building full roads now.
Yeah.
And that's what the trail is, so, yeah.
Shot themselves in the foot.
Well, one of the discussions that I've heard from citizens about the trail system in particular, like on Longboat Key, is, well, it's taken up, permeable land. And so now you're having impervious, pavement put down. So your drainage, and we have a real drainage problem. A lot of places have it, but, so that's a concern. That if you widen it, you're gonna pay more land, and you're gonna have more runoff, and you have to handle that runoff in a different way. So I don't know, that's just my political comment. All that.
I was just thinking of, is there gonna be room for because I was thinking about development and I was thinking about grade separation. Is there some kind of room for that? Cause I know they're building, a big overpass over, Clark and Bee Ridge, and I was wondering if there was gonna be more room for that in the future. That is because had it and then it just went away. Oh, man.
Dangerous.
I would push the energy back.
I didn't catch it.
You'll catch it.
Yes, short answer.
Yeah.
We'll continue to invest. We're investing in two others at Beneva and Vista. Those are under design. Huddle is the HUD grant, and Fruitville is the final overpass. So we're looking at 6
Because
just in that segment.
I was thinking, because, at some points, you guys were gonna lower the separation from 12 feet to 8 feet in some cases, and I was like. So I don't know, it just had me thinking about grade separation, and I was like, if you can't, if you have to make it 8 feet, at least make it somewhat grade separated.
Yeah, and that's the priority, especially on a trail that's doing the numbers that the trail is, right? The preference is not to have them cross graded any state road.
It was crazy on Ross for enough.
Yeah, I believe it, and I think that's the idea. You've got 1,000, you can't have 1,000 people crossing a grade daily, right? That's a huge number that we are aware of, which is why we're investing so heavily in these. I think originally we had Sun Trail funding to do 2 of them. Clark and Bee Ridge was about $7.5 million. We're all in on those 2, including some of our money at 15 million. That includes some FPL issues, but that's what costs have done, and that's what we're unfortunately dealing with on some of these projects. So yes, I think it's a huge priority. I probably, there's been debate on whether or not you would put RFPs or flashing signals, and then on these faster roadways, you have to install hawks. So those are all things that we're having to kind of deal with. The trail will certainly come first, but how we cross is certainly a different challenge.
Any further questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to, authorize the letter of support?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we're on to presentations.
Hello, my name is Adam Rose. I am related to Pete Rose, and no, I'm not allowed near casinos. So thank you for joining us today. I am the project manager on the FDOT side for the Barrier Island Complete Streets PD&E project, which is Project Development and Environment Study. We are going to be kind of going over a brief study. We just kicked this off back in January, so this is fairly recent. We haven't really gotten a whole lot moving yet, but we are getting the groundwork laid out. As you can see, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the FDOT Compass. It's been kind of a fairly new concept. It's been around for the last year or two. It kind of derives how we move our projects, our guiding principles. All of these play a big part in all of our projects. The two that we're looking at right now is for safety and community. Safety, obviously, a Complete Streets project does improve safety. And communities, we are obviously talking to you, trying to get your input and make sure we're understanding kind of from all of our municipalities, all of our committees, understanding what it is that your community wants for this project. For the agenda today, I'm going to be handing it off to my colleague, Colleen. We're going to be going through project description and status. We're going to go through the purpose and need, kind of touch a little bit on safety, project background and approach, the tentative schedule, and then our contact info, and followed by question and answers.
Okay, thank you. I'm Colleen Ross, and I'm the PM on the consultant side for this project. The project is located on Anna Maria Island within the cities of Bradenton Beach and Holmes Beach. And the limits of the project are broken into two segments because the piece along State Road 64, between State Road 789 to the south and Gulf Drive to the north is not part of this PD&E study. So the segment to the south is State Road 789, and that begins just north of the Longboat Pass Bridge and continues north up to State Road 64, and that's about 3.7 miles in length. And then the study picks up again where State Road 64 and Gold Drive intersect, and that extends to 85th Street, also White Avenue. And that's about 2.2 miles in length for a total project length of about 6 miles. The corridor is predominantly an undivided 2-lane facility and is the primary corridor that serves the island. It's also a key evacuation route during emergencies. So this slide presents FDOT's delivery process. We are in phase 2, or the PD&E study phase. Prior to this phase, FDOT performed the Sarasota and Manatee Barrier Islands Traffic Study. We just call it BITS. It's easier. But that was completed in 2020. This PD&E study is the only phase that's currently funded in FDOT's work program. However, the department is working with its partners to fund future phases. The purpose and need is a federal process that provides the basis for developing and evaluating alternatives developed for the project. The purpose of this project is to address the pedestrian and bicycle safety issues and existing roadway deficiencies while enhancing multimodal connectivity and system linkage. The project is needed to improve safety conditions for both vehicular and multimodal traffic. And it will enhance system linkage by closing the gap on the SunTrail network, extending the network a little bit north. And then by connecting the proposed multimodal improvements on those bridges that are going to be replaced that connect to the island. The project is also needed to accommodate existing and future modal development and to address deficiencies such as multimodal deficiencies and ADA facilities, as well as substandard roadway treatments along the corridor. So here is a map of the existing SunTrail. Well, this is the green is the existing segment of SunTrail, and the red identifies unfunded segments. The existing segment is in green and it is from just north of the Longboat Pass Bridge to Fifth Street. It runs just parallel of State Road 789 to the west. Our project will connect to the Fifth Street segment of that SunTrail network and will provide facilities up to Gulf Bay or Gulf Drive and East Bay Drive. So once the construction of the Longboat Pass Bridge segment, which does include a SunTrail system, pedestrians and bicyclists will be able to have dedicated facilities from just south of Longboat Pass Bridge up to Gulf Drive and East Bay Drive intersection, which is about 4 miles. So this study, we will be incorporating Federal Highway Safe System approach, which FDOT has adopted. So this approach acknowledges that humans make mistakes, that the human body is vulnerable, and we should design and operate our transportation systems to ensure that if a crash occurs, it does not result in serious human injury. We are considering all options and opportunities to improve safety along the corridor. And right now we are identifying and developing engineering solutions and best practices that encourage safe driving behavior to reduce those roadway fatalities and serious injuries. We also plan to collaborate with the local governments to ensure that safety considerations are prioritized. We have been reviewing crash history from 2018 to 2022 and found that bicycle and pedestrian crashes along the corridor are approximately 2 times higher than the statewide average. We found that 46% of the severe crashes include crashes that have fatalities or serious human injury. So of those, we found that 46% of those involved a pedestrian or a bicyclist during that 5-year period. Additionally, 49% of the total crashes were occurring at intersections. We are seeing a concerning trend of severe crashes going up since 2019. And in 2023, there were 4 crashes on the corridor, in which 1 included a fatality. So we're performing a safety analysis and identifying the existing safety issues and potential solutions to eliminate the severe crashes. We will be hosting a safety workshop with key stakeholders that would include like law enforcement and first responders, and that is tentatively scheduled for late summer. The PD&E study is building upon previously completed studies, plans, and initiatives shown here on the slide. These studies and plans will help inform our study to provide a complete streets corridor that meets the needs and the vision of the Anna Maria Island community. So project approach, the project will be developed through engaging with the Anna Maria Island community to gain their input on known issues and potential opportunities that can help better inform our technical approach. With the mixture of land uses along the corridor combined with the high density of multimodal users, the project or the corridor needs safer facilities for pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit users. Therefore, multimodal alternatives will be developed to not only meet the project's purpose and need, but also the community vision for the area. One of the project goals is to reduce flooding along the corridor. A drainage analysis is part of our study, and we'll be engaging with the cities of Holmes Beach and Bradenton Beach to gain their insights on where those issues are happening and what can be done. So the schedule, as Adam mentioned, we started this project in January. We are currently developing preliminary concepts and alternatives. A safety workshop again is scheduled for late summer. The alternatives public workshop is anticipated in early 2025. And at that will show our initial alternatives to the public and, hopefully gain their input and feedback on those alternatives. Then those alternatives will be further evaluated and refined and for potential effects to environmental resources in the area. If required, a public hearing will happen in mid-2025, and we will be finishing the study up in early 2026, and public involvement and stakeholder engagement will be happening throughout the study. We do have a safety moment today as we approach summer. The period between Memorial Day and Labor Day is considered the 100 deadliest days for teen drivers. Parents can help ensure a safer ride for their teens by talking to them about safety when driving, like limiting the number of passengers in the car, eliminating distractions like cell phones, obeying posted speed limits, remaining attentive, and restricting nighttime driving, and of course, buckling up. If you have any questions or concerns after today, you can contact myself or Adam. Our contact information is on the slide. And to stay up to date on the project, there's now a website and you can scan this QR code to get it quickly. And we thank you for allowing us this opportunity to present an overview today, and happy to take any questions.
In the corridor, are you hoping to keep the corridor on Gulf Drive or need to utilize, the next street backwards?
I don't think we have any plans on utilizing anything beyond what's Gulf Drive's already there. Complete Street normally just utilizes all the existing right of way that's there. There's some projects that may go a little into the right of way, but we don't anticipate going outside.
Not a
that.
major shift in alignment.
Yeah.
Right.
But there is one area where it's really tight up in Holmes Beach, where we may do a bicycle boulevard. In other words, encourage through signing them to don't use this way and just go. And I'm trying to remember which street that's on. I want to say it's Holmes Road. Holmes Boulevard, thank you. And that might work, yes.
So I heard you say you'll do the safety analysis. The thing with that particular, you don't just have the people who live on the beaches, you have so many people coming in, out, visitors. I mean, there's so many people, not just those people living there. And I think the fatalities are more from the people who are traveling there or traveling back. And talking about your safety analysis, and I saw you said the most dangerous, thank you, can't say you. Somebody's giving me the energy. Wait. Yeah, thank you, yeah, so it's interesting because we talk to the kids about how many passengers, not on their phones. You can literally drive down and see them taking selfies driving. So do you think like a presentation after you do the analysis with legislators to say, we need to, I just don't know why we just shouldn't cut cell phones out completely. With picking them up at all and that they get caught with them, because I don't know what else to do, because we're saying 2019, all of the, crashes have been going up. But I mean, when do we actually start being able to change this? All these presentations and doing your analysis as far as legislation, it might be that, because I don't necessarily think it'll go down. I know we can do and put in things we can to try to prevent, having more crashes, but do you see it going down with
So it goes into kind of an enforcement thing as well, because we work a lot with our local agencies, especially our sheriff and police departments. And obviously highway patrol, we have a lot of their headquarters are in our buildings. Some of the things we do when we do safety analysis is that we will look at, and this isn't all projects, this is some projects. We will look into those reports because there are crash reports at the end of things, and we can look at stuff. And we can only do as much as documented, which they usually do a great job.
Right.
But the problem is, it's also going into a difference of enforcement and how we can design to prevent as well. Now, obviously, human error is something that we're never gonna be able to completely eradicate, so all we can do is try to slow it down by the design of the roadway or design of how we, anticipate these intersections. I think what was being talked about was an intersection, I apologize, I didn't catch where you guys were talking about. I don't know if I misheard that, but
Oh, Holmes Road,
I think
Holmes
so,
Boulevard?
that might have been it, but they're clearly education is something we do a lot of safety outreach, and when we go to the safety briefing, we're gonna hear a lot from our law enforcement. We're gonna hear a lot from what they've understood because they've been in here, they understand this area better than we do. We're gonna listen to what they say, and if we hear that there's something that we could design the roadway to kind of alleviate some of those issues, we definitely take that in consideration, we'll look and evaluate it.
One more question, the roundabouts, do we think those are? I swear I'm about to crash every time I
You
go
have
to
to,
it.
that's a great question,
Confusing sometimes.
but they are the safest.
Oh, man, and I didn't say you're driving and I'm like.
Well,
You gotta slow down.
You gotta remember, it cuts down fatalities.
Right,
And
That's the
serious injuries, so you might get fender benders, but
Right.
our goal in the safe system approach is to reduce those severe crashes where we have life-changing injuries and fatalities. And you'll probably notice, or you've probably noticed as you're driving, so many roads are really wide, like really wide, that were built many, many years ago, and you can drive on them like a racetrack.
Oh, that's true.
And this is part of, a change that's happening in federal highway, and it's rolling down to the states. It's the safe system approach, where we need to remember that if we visually give people so much space, they're gonna take full advantage of it. We need to narrow things down a bit. There's lots of countermeasures, one being a roundabout. A roundabout not only makes you slow down, but it makes you pay attention, because no one is paying more attention than when they are in a roundabout, because you're really worrying about who's coming and going through this thing, right? So it is one of the best countermeasures that not only slows down traffic, but it also gets everyone's attention. And I went to a conference a few years ago, and to date, there had only been one person killed in a roundabout, and that is because they were constructing it, and a guy was drunk on a motorcycle and went through the do not enter and landed somewhere. But otherwise, they really reduced those severe crashes, which is what we want to do. And I hope you can explain that to people, that there, yes, you might get a fender bender or whatever, but it's such a big difference between that and a severe crash.
Does the Cortez Bridge include a complete streets component to it, or will this study integrate into what is being planned for that?
That's part of the area, not the bridge itself, but
Yeah.
the road that leads up to it at that intersection.
That is part of
Is
that.
it part of it? Okay.
But we are gonna be coordinating with that team. We are in charge of the Gulf Drive portion, and the bridge replacement comes just up to that. They did study a roundabout that when they did a PD&E there, and found that just it just wouldn't operate unless they did like a 2-lane roundabout and then they blow up the whole.
Too late, I can't even imagine.
Right away is a huge impact that we're always looking at, making sure that we're not relocating people. That is always something that we're kind of being very careful on. And we coordinate, when we do have to do right away takes, we do coordinate very early to make sure that, you know, people aren't caught off guard. So that is, right away is always a big thing that we look at to make sure that we're doing what we can with what we can. And sometimes if we can't, we just have to find the next step to it.
Which is why we're trying to stay as much as possible within the right of way as we can with this project, but there's some areas that are just so tight that there might be some small areas of right of way.
Any other questions? I have a couple of questions. So first, one of your slides had pointed to the Longboat Pass bridge. And I think it says 2028, but I think it's 2030.
Oh, I
Yeah.
swear we looked on the Sun Trail.
We wish it was.
Oh, no, I looked on the.
It could have gotten switched, we just.
Yes.
I just checked it or something. I just had something.
I had,
I could have moved it.
This was an internal discussion at the department. They had to go and do an internal discussion because I think I did have another date and I think it may be moved up.
oh, good. Okay, maybe.
Maybe. That was what the official response from the department. Somebody lives in Central.
Part of this is gonna evaluate flooding and drainage.
Right.
So, folks along the key are very keen on knowing what some of your solutions are gonna be for handling the flooding. So I think we would like, and I'm sure through me, through this committee, we'll be apprised of what you're coming up with for solving this situation.
Sure.
And like we said on our schedule, can we go back to the schedule slide?
Yeah, you got a workshop coming up, right? You know
So
when that's gonna be?
we have a safety workshop is kind of the first thing we're looking at, and then after that, we'll go into the next public workshop, which is looking at early 2025. It's gonna be all alternatives.
Okay.
I can't speak to them either. But that's when we kind of come back with some of our ideas. We kind of show you we'll give you like 1 or 2 concepts, and we're just like, tell us what you like about this one and that one. And then by the time we get to the public hearing, if everything works perfectly, we kind of take the best of both worlds, best of what everyone likes, the best that's, economically, environmentally, productive, and kind of put those together and give a finished product at the end.
And the documents at some point would be on the project website, so you can look at them there or request a meeting. I mean, the city of Holmes Beach is already doing quite a few exfiltration trenches. They've gotten grants to do them. And I think they're working okay, we'll be coordinating with that.
I was just gonna add, this morning, Isaac did provide a comment in the TAC as well regarding the impacts of this evaluation, this study. The Cortez Bridge, Emory, Longboat Pass,
Someone's outside the living record.
Ringling, all the bridges, all the road projects that are impacting Longboat Key. And we'll see here in just a second when we talk about the C2P, seasonality of some of these things, and all the data that goes into the evaluation that will take place. We'll work with the department, of course, making sure that they've got the data and the responses that you've all provided to us, and make sure that's incorporated in some of those solutions. Obviously, work with them with what we've got. We're not trying to buy them, we're trying to. So I think we'll come up with some solutions that are feasible. That's the name of the game. We don't want to go out there promising that we're going to change the complete identity of an area that is very hard to change, quite frankly. And I think that is part of it, is setting expectations and doing what we can. So that's the
Right. Because that would be a concern of mine too. I mean, it's a beach community, right? As
You
a
don't want
beach
to change
community
anything.
feel.
Yep.
You go in and just pave it like a parking lot, it's not gonna have.
Same impact. Yep.
And that's not this project, this is trail type infrastructure, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you don't wanna go overboard with the road layout and how you're gonna fix it. And with when you propose the roundabouts, it's a tiny island, like, it's not like, I think it's even tinier than the villages, like Siesta, like, it's really narrow, so like, honestly, if I'd really prioritize like, more multimodal, access and, try, I think you said something about like a bike lane somewhere or a
That's what
bike
this-
path.
That's what this project is, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
multimodal,
Yeah,
yeah, cause
so
there's
I
not-
think what
yeah.
you're doing is like, ah,
it's after 5.
it's after 5, yep. So, yeah, so,
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, what I think you're doing is, pretty solid. In concept, I guess, we'll have to see, but
Exactly.
I guess.
Yeah.
What do I know?
Any other
No, your
questions?
input's great.
Yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Any other questions or discussions?
No, I think the ferry, having the ferry, I know we have a ferry coming, I think those are gonna be, I think that's a very impactful concept that they came up with to eliminate some of that traffic. And then the people that know they may be drinking, and they don't wanna drive, that might help and prevent a lot of I think in the long run, those ferries are gonna be a big impact to less accidents also.
I think the berries have started up. I know they plan to increase the number, but they could use some bike ped facilities to connect to that ferry when people come on. And I know that I've heard that the vendors or the store owners are happy because those folks slow down, they're not in their car, stop, walk into the store. I personally visit this island every year for like a week with my family and friends, so I'm like a pretty good stakeholder myself, and I like to bike and I love to bike, but I don't feel that safe.
Yeah.
Unless I'm down there on Coquina Beach and it's just not enough.
And I live in Riverview, so I come here and visit quite often.
Yeah.
Get away from the movies when I want to get out.
Sure.
I came, I went up to by Coquina Beach and Anna Marina with my cousin who's coming down from overseas, and I was like, oh dang, this is like a first impression for her. And I was like, got a really big stake for that because there is that precedence there.
Right.
And there's this one time we were driving and like there was this like, I don't know, there was this guy in like a lifted truck and he almost like gave me a fender bender. And like, well, my cousin was in the car and I was like,
Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing
Yeah,
around there too, yeah.
on this road.
Yeah, it's.
Okay, so any other questions? Okay.
All right,
very
thank
much.
you guys so much.
All right. Good discussions. Thank you, very good. Next item, 6B. Yes. Right?
Yeah, so this is kind of a good segue talking about Fair Island study and traffic. The island, as we mentioned, this has come to you all a couple times already, congestion management process update. It's been ongoing for about 5 years. And with us is Jihan Hui. She's from Kittleton Associates. She's up in Tallahassee, so she's joining us here virtually tonight. But she's gonna run us through some data, some maps that we've been working on. And ultimately, our final recommendations and some of our priorities, our prioritizations in some of our segments. So you'll see some maps. This will all be finalized here by the end of June. And it'll come back for confirmation to the board in September. So this is kind of the summary. As I mentioned, this is looking at our congestion process, how we're evaluating it, and how we're prioritizing some of the major segments throughout the region. So you can take it away, Jan.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Yihan Sui from Kittleton Associates. Today, I'm going to go over the progress we made so far. We have shared some of the progress during the past two CAC meetings. So I want to give you all a recap of what we discussed before and also some of the new stuff that we're working on right now and also the conclusion we draw so far and also discuss the next steps. So just quickly recap what is the congestion management process. It is required by the FHWA and couple key components in the CMP that we mentioned, including define goal and objectives, recommended performance measures based on the goal and objectives, and also review available data source for the performance measures, and then evaluate the performance measures and identify strategies and monitoring system after that. The task one of the CMP is to evaluate and update goals, data, and needs. So we already reviewed and update the existing goals and objectives, which is from the 2019 CMP document, and also assess the available data sources and define the performance measures, and also the data needs based on the performance measures. The next task, task 2, is to assess the strategies, implementation, and evaluation, which we have done the hotspot analysis and also the performance matrix analysis, and then identify the congestion management strategies and recommendations for implementation, and also evaluation of effectiveness is part of this task 2. For the hotspot analysis, we identify the prioritization locations or corridors from each of the performance measures. And overall, we layer everything together to come up with a list of prioritization locations. This is the list of all 8 goals that we use in the we are using in the CMP, and I'm going to go through each analysis component based on the goals. Next slide. So this is the data collection process. We basically have a CMP network, which include not only the state highway system, but also some major corridors with high traffic. And the data we collected is for year 2024 for most of the data. We collect the crush data, we collect the volume data, the probe speed, travel time, and travel speed, also the American Commuter Survey data, also coordinate with the active transportation plan, and also use data from the DOT source book. Goal number 1 is to identify problematic spots with safety concerns. So we use the safety from the historical crush data, and then do a hotspot analysis to overlay and on a network to see where are the most high crush corridors or intersections. Next slide shows 2 maps about the high number of fatalities and serious injuries locations. So from this heat map, you will be able to see downtown Brighton area is definitely one of the very high crush location. And also along I-75, you see some near the interchange area. There are a little bit of hotspot everywhere along I-75 near the each interchange. And downtown Sarasota area, there are also some high fatalities in that area. Next slide. So goal number 2 is to provide a high quality mobility to people and freight. The map we're showing here is the level of service, which is using the FDOT's QLOS guidebook. So we have the legend and show it in pass or fail, which fail basically means is fail the level of service requirement by DOT. And you will see so failures along I-75, DeSoto Bridge, and downtown Brighton area. In the rural area, there are some fail the level of service threshold because of the high volume along the corridor. Next slide is showing goal number 2. We also use the vehicle of delay to show the high congestion area. The high delay are occurring along I-75 and downtown Brighton and DeSoto Bridge. There are also some spark brightness in downtown Sarasota area. Next slide. We also shows during the morning and afternoon commute time, which is the 7 to 8 a.m. and 5 to 6 p.m. during the weekday to show the speed ratio, which is the average travel speed versus the posted speed limit. So basically, it will be able to show the driver's experience on the roadway to show where is the most congested area. The green means people are speeding and sometimes drive over the speed limit, and the right color means it is really congested in that area. So we can see from the map and analysis that I-75, some corridors, people are traveling much lower than the posted speed during the peak, and also the downtown Brighton area, downtown Sarasota area, and the DeSoto Bridge. So basically, we have a lot of areas that people are traveling below the posted speed limit, and the red color shows the areas that especially bad, that people are traveling at a very low speed limit. Next slide. The goal number 3, we want to increase the reliability of travel within the CMP network, which means we want to make sure people are getting to their destination on time. The percentage of the CMP network miles operating reliably is 94%, which this data comes from the RETAS data. And some of the unreliable areas you can see is the downtown Brighton area. Across the bridge, there's a short segment, it's also very unreliable. And along I-75, some segments shows very unreliable. Next slide. Goal number 4 is to provide efficient transportation operations. We use the planning time index and the level of travel time reliability, also the truck travel time reliability. Here the map shows the daily level planning time index, and we can see many areas has some unrecurring congestion issue, and we can see very unreliable travel along I-75, downtown Brighton and downtown Sarasota, and also part of the Longboat Key, and also the bridge goes to the Longboat Key area. So next slide shows the weekend planning time index, which we try to see the visitors experience, and during the weekends, how people experience delay. We're using November to April 2022 for the data, and you can see very unreliable weekend travel towards the island area and also along the DeSoto Bridge. It's more unreliable than the weekday commute time. Next slide, the goal number 7 is to promote accessible use of transportation system for all users. We have shown those results before, so I just want to point out some high-level takeaway. 57.1% of the CMP network was covered by the non-motorized facilities, which is a combination of either bike, pedestrian facilities. And we can see the percent of population within half mile of transit stop is 52%. The pedestrian and bicycle facilities, around 61% of the population are within half mile of those facilities. The trail facility has relatively low population coverage, which only 11%. Slide. Goal number 8. We're focusing on the environmental protection and want to encourage preservation of the natural environment while maintaining economic development and livability. The map shows the EV chargers in the MPO area. We are using the data in 2024. You can see a relatively good EV charger coverage in urban area. However, in the rural area, there are not many EV chargers in the rural area, and along the major corridors, I-75, for each, most of the exit or entrance point, you will see some EV chargers there. Next slide. So from all those performance metrics, we overlay the transportation matrix to decide the prioritization locations, also with some ground truth review. The safety high crash locations was also considered, but as a different layer. And the threshold we use for those transportation performance metrics, we weighting different performance metrics by different percentage. And you can see here all the percentage list out and the total percentage 100% for all the metrics. The next slide shows all the layers overlaid together and realized by the prioritization score. You can see I-75 is definitely showing some high prioritization. However, I-75 master plan, which is done by FDOT, will focus to resolve the congestion issue along I-75. So for the MPO effort, we're going to focus on the remaining facilities. So downtown DeSoto Bridge is definitely showing a very red color, and part of the Longboat Key, downtown Sarasota, some corridors in downtown Brayton area is showing as very high congestion area and will be our focus area moving forward. The next steps, and we are developing the congestion management toolbox, which has different focus area, and the 3 main focus areas in the toolbox, including mobility remedies, data collection, and connectivity. So using this toolbox and the prioritization locations that we identified in the previous slides, we're going to recommend strategies for each specific locations. Next slides. We also evaluate the effectiveness of the previous CMP by reviewing the ongoing or funded projects from DOT's work program. So this is the list of all the programs that are currently ongoing in this round of 5-year work program. And we find 3 or 4 of those projects come from the previous CMP, which means the CMP, previous CMP, the project we recommend is something DOT is taking into consideration and continue pushing forward. The task 3 is the final CMP document, which including the documentation of all the analysis and the conclusion that I shared in this meeting. And also we will have an executive summary that summarizes the CMP findings and the next steps in the CMP document. The next steps of this projects, including identifying recommendations for each prioritization locations, as I shared before. Also, the CMP document, which Ryan also shared, will be published and shared with everyone in September meeting. That's all the analysis and the next steps we decide so far. Any questions?
Any questions?
This is probably more for Ryan.
Sure.
Looking at this in the big picture, this is a Federal Highway Administration mandated study. I'm assuring every other MPO around the country and the state. So our congestion in Manatee and Sarasota County is illustrated here. Do they compare this to I-95 on the East Coast? And money's then allocated based on, so our congestion is not, I'm assuming, not as bad as a lot of other places.
It's relative, but given time of day and wrong place at the wrong time, if you put yourself in on, Cortez in March 15th at 4 p.m. coming off the beach, it's just about as bad as anywhere in the world, right? So I think, we build our system as well as we can,
Right.
given the ability, right? You go out to I-75 at noon on a Sunday, there's really no congestion, right? It's
Right.
8 lanes. It seems like you should be able to deal with that. You go out there right now, it's pretty severe. So I think we're not as consistent, maybe, say I-95 through Miami-Dade. Okay, probably not as consistently congested, right? But these are relative measures and they do take that into account. So reliability, vehicle hours delay, PTI, which is the planning time index, the seasonality of that, as well as average travel speed. Travel speed, can you go back to the travel speed one real quick, or actually that's us, sorry. The travel speed is an easy one to display. It basically, keep going back to the past, yeah. Keep going. Maybe I was wrong, I missed it. Other way, yeah. Wherever I see speed, I'll tell you stuff. That's delay, there we go, right here. So this is the easy one to look at, so these ratios, I'll just read them out to you, 0 to 0.48. So these are roughly about half the speed of what you would be going. So in downtown Bradenton, that's pretty bad, right? So your posted speed in some of those areas is 30, 35 miles an hour. It means on average during PM peak or weekday AM peak, you're moving at 15 miles an hour. Similarly, in some of these other areas in downtown Sarasota, or out on the interstate, you're experiencing, maybe between 0.4 and 0.7. So on the interstate, that would put you at 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour in some circumstances. So that's what these relationships are showing. That's kind of how we ended up on those percentages, is that we took into account really the ratios from where they are. Posted speed is the best reflection of commuter speed, essentially, how long it's going to take you to get anywhere. Same thing with the PTI, that's your planning time index, that takes into account how long you think it should take. So those red segments were up to 2.5 times longer. So we're going to take a 20-minute trip, it could take you nearly 50. If you're going out to the island, that's what you can kind of anticipate, right? So this information will go into that and the priority of those kind of preferred segments. So those 15 to 25 projects that we kind of talked about, they'll rise out of that based on that priority. And that's where we're going to focus our funding and efforts on this congestion front.
I think the methodology and the approach is great. Everybody uses the same methodology.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why we have to be really strategic. We are a very seasonal location as well. You got there in the middle of July, maybe not as severe, right? So we really have to take all those things into consideration when we're doing those evaluations. Yes.
It's hard for me to comprehend somebody in DC's looking at this saying, the guy didn't take twice as long to get to his beach house. And I'm trying to drive up I-95 in Virginia.
And that's where I'd say you bet you shouldn't own a car if you live in DC.
Yeah.
Those are, I think we kind of driven ourselves into these situations, right? Or we all, Dave and I will always, Dave's here, we'll do the same thing. We'll drive us back to land use and patterns of development, right?
Yeah.
We are the way we are because of how we built this.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you're in New York, it's all irrelevant, right? Like, there's gonna be congestion because it's built that way. For us, experiencing congestion in the area of the landmass that we have, like the size of Rhode Island, it's probably not great to have severe levels of congestion. We need to do better creating robust networks, better grid systems, less dead ends, right? I think that's why we experience lots and lots of delay built into our system when you go that. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and this will help kind of prioritize the funding in our LRTP, which I'll talk about briefly in a little bit. This is kind of a foundational layer of our long-range plan to say, these are the areas we really focus on.
But from the short time I've been on the committee and seeing what the plans are for interchanges on I-75 and lanes on I-75, we're definitely trying to stay a half a step ahead of.
It's an attempt, right? We've talked about managed lanes on 75, which is kind of why we're deferring, right? We're not going to step on DOT's toes in terms of I-75 planning. It's master planned on every major interstate in the state of Florida. That's already being considered. Every major investment, we've had 6 of our 8 interchanges already redone. We're just waiting on Greenville and Bee Ridge. We're on pace with everywhere else in the state in terms of investment in our interstate system. That's not really a concern. It's, some of these other roadways where there aren't really other many funding mechanisms or other things like that we still need to focus on. Yeah. So that's all we got on that.
Any other questions, discussion? All right. We got 6B2.
Well, you're not good. So I'll give you a brief update. Similarly, on the same kind of timeline, we're working on our resiliency effort as well. Really, these kind of go hand in hand in all of our efforts. Resiliency obviously is a big topic that's continually coming up. Like storm experiences we've had in the last 5 years have been pretty severe, and I think this is on the forefront of lots of our decision makers' minds, and certainly ours. It's a mandate now through our latest infrastructure bill So we're continuing to evaluate. We're in phase 2 now of this. So really just want to give a few brief updates. The similar schedule as the CMP. We're wrapping up the document in June, by the end of June, and final presentation and document provided in September's board meeting. So with that, I really just wanted to talk a little bit how we're kind of deciding these final groups of projects as well. So there's a few words up here I'll kind of explain. FDOT's RAP is a resiliency action plan over there on the left. TRAG is our Transportation Related Resiliency Advisory Group, and stakeholder engagements on any outreach we did during this. So this is kind of a ratio that we put together to say, you know, high, medium, or low. If it's in the RAP, so Regional Resiliency Action Plan statewide, it's basically high, right? And you overlay that with anything that's coming out of our TRAG and stakeholder engagement, that's in Group A. So all three, it's the highest tier. Similar to OR, high and OR, it's B, C, D, et cetera. It's a fairly simple process of how we can arrange these. So with that, this project list up here, nothing's finalized or definitive at this point, but this is kind of what rose out using these criteria. And this is a combination of roadways that you'll see are fairly regional in nature. We tried to remain as a regional agency and an agency that's focused on investing in these areas. This was taken to the TAC. Didn't have really many major comments regarding these roadways. You know, they're going to focus on their neighborhood roads. We're really expected to step up and come in on some of these major roadways. So some major ones that stand out, and not surprisingly, on I-75 down by Charlotte County line and up to River Road, where they experienced flooding during the last storm. We've continued to look at that. 789, lots of discussion today. Nearly 5 segments of 789 up here. 64, Venice Avenue, River Road, Clark, 681. So a lot of major roadways that kind of all overlap in a conjunction of areas that we need to address. We also did stakeholder interviews with each jurisdiction, not just their public works folks, but also environmentalists, people that are focused on stormwater, drainage, just outside of the rural municipal transportation groups. So this group here is kind of similarly broken out to a matrix. You've got projects that are already in our LRTP in the top left, then things that are on state facilities, and then those at the bottom there, those 3 that are in our LRTP but are not a state, those are things that we probably expected to help step in and help try to fund or locate other discretionary grants. On the right-hand side, our non-LRTP, so things we didn't consider 5 years ago, but are in state facilities, and then the bottom right, similarly, 9 state facilities that are not, so may want to be considered adding into our cost feasibility plan in the next update. So this project matrix is somewhat tentative at this point, but it is a list that brings out the best kind of characteristics of things that we do need to address in terms of resiliency. We are developing fact sheets for each and every one of these roadways. But something we want to be able to pull out if we go to a legislative session or somewhere we're looking for investment in types of projects where we can say, this is what it is, provides a high level overview, what a specific hazard is presenting, whether it's storm surge, sea level rise, inches of rain, wildfires, inland flooding, river flooding, all those things that'll be identified based on the type of hazard and its criticality of why it's important, how many trips, it's an evacuation route, if there's a school or hospital along that route. So it'll give you that 30,000 level view where you'll be able to say, here's these major fact sheets, here's the things we can present. And ultimately, you know, the goal is moving into, you know, what is it, what type of roadway it is, what can we do, and how can we afford to build it into our study. So these fact sheets will be developed for all of these roadways, and we'll be happy to share those, and you can use them for informational purposes as well. The main part of this whole thing, right, is ultimately getting funding and moving these projects forward. There's a number of discretionary grants, including our funds. Our funds are formula-based. These are all discretionary-based type programs. So Protect, based really around resiliency. There's also some federal emergency management grants, local grants, USDOT grades grants, a much harder grant to get, quite expensive, and also some Florida Resilient Coastlines grants that are all out there. So these are all things that are be competitive, but also strategic in terms of what you're applying for. They're typically fairly costly to apply for. I think the Department of District 1 spent about $1 million last year, I think, just in District 1 on competitive grant applications, which is not overly shocking or surprising, but it is one of those things where your success rate's not extremely high. Raise grant, for example, about 10%. The applications were funded through the raise grant process. You have to be strategic in what you're applying for. We don't just go out there and say, we're gonna apply for raise grants for all 20 roadways. That's not something that we would look to do. So it's a balance of all these things, and it'll certainly be taken into consideration when we start developing and fleshing out the long range plan. So really similar, kind of mentioned this already, the schedule kind of wrapping up here. We're in May. Got the board presentation here next Monday. Wrapping up the LRTP integration, so how these projects fit into our cost feasible recommendations before we get there. And ultimately, the final report and executive summary will be done by the end of our fiscal year. So with that, I'll take any questions. Yeah. So there's my information. It's not my direct phone number, but I'll get to that.
Ryan, have there been any advances in road engineering to address resiliency questions?
Yeah, so the state has a materials lab up in Gainesville. We visited, I think, last year. There's constant research being done on that front. Soil inundation, wildfires burning. There's all kinds of things, extreme heat. All things are being considered in that process. I know during the last major storm, Sanibel, when it washed out, they went back and kind of evaluated the causeways. The bridges aren't really things that fail. It's typically the causeways that lead up to them. So causeways are just built up earth, right? Those are the things that failed during some of those major storms. So they've gone back and evaluated how that works, the materials, the subgrade material, things that you build into them that basically say, how do we fix this thing? So yes, the state's constantly evolving and trying to better understand the materials that they're putting into the roads. It's not my background or expertise, but certainly something that the state is constantly doing with, because we have noticed a decrease in timeline for needing to resurface, right? The expectation is 10, 12 years. Some really harsh areas, it's 5, right? You're seeing washouts happen a lot more frequently. Those are things that they're consistent. Yep.
The project I-75 Charlotte County Line River Road.
Yeah.
On the Punta Charlotte County MPO, is that
Yes.
weird project on the other side going south? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it also an A, or do you know?
Yeah, they don't do it the exact same way, but it is they have even less facilities than we do. They're not a TMA MPO, meaning they don't get the issue that we get. So I can almost certainly say that anything that is a state road facility for them is a high priority.
Okay.
So basically all the coordination we do every January. We meet with them jointly. There's always discussions about what are we doing on 75, 41, connections down on South River Road, Winchester, et cetera. So we're constantly planning.
My concern would be, we have A and they have C.
No.
Will the funding not come together?
No, and like I said, kind of with the CMP different discussion, I-75 is gonna be I-75.
Okay.
It'll always be under construction, there'll always be advancing. That is the state's #1 facility in this region. We just simply are using our funds to kind of divert gaps in the system, if you will. But yes, that will be continuing to be evaluated. Anything else?
Any other questions? Okay, just move on to the next one.
Almost done.
Wrap it up. We're
Go for it.
Yeah, so all this being said, I kind of wanted to finish up with the LRTP, as you all know, it's our guiding document and the background of everything we do. We're kicked it off here early 24. And wanted to give you a brief update of where we are thus far, some of the preliminary works that we've done and some of the events that we've got coming up. So we've kind of revamped our logo and color scheme and added Invest Today. We're working with our consulting team. All 3 of our GPCs are on board for this effort, as well as At Large, who is a PR marketing group that's helping with visuals and a lot of our preparations of surveys, et cetera. So we've got a large team working on this effort, but looking forward to moving forward. So here in May of 24, we've completed our outline and complete matrix of responsibility. So having 4 consultants working on a singular project, you have to be very organized in terms of who's doing what, the timelines and expectations of those things. So that's one of the items that we looked at. The second here is a little bit more technical, but the 2050 socioeconomic, that's what that means, economic forecast data and coordination. So we do traffic demand modeling out to 2050 and look at each individual TAZ traffic analysis zone, 1,200 of them in Sarasota, Manatee County. We look at what's being built and the rate it will be built out over the next 25 years. That is that data and will be inputted into District 1's regional planning model. So each MPO in District 1 does this kind of exercise. We build this big social system of how our roadways work together. So that's been completed and coordinated with District 1, and that's being inputted kind of as we speak. We've also developed our public outreach strategy with at large, dictated that out over 3 major phases, which will be completed in October of 2025. Those 3 phases are comprised of kind of our preliminary scenario vision. Some of the work that we've done is in phase 2. That's the main part, how it all applies. And then phase 3, looking at the cost feasible plan and how we actually go about implementing all these plans that we've done. Coming up here shortly, open currently is our visioning survey. That's the survey. I think you saw it. It's open until June 15th. We're looking for feedback. This is kind of a more preliminary general survey. It's got some socio-demographic questions. It's got, how do you feel about our vision? How do you feel about some of our scenarios? Some of the things that we did in 2045. We're kind of in an update period rather than a full revamp. We just came up with these scenarios and vision 4 years ago. So this is are we still heading in the right direction? What do you think we can help improve? So that's what's in that survey. We also have our visioning workshop on the 29th, Selby Auditorium right across the street from 4:30 to 6:30. So we hope to see all you out there. That'll be a great intro to the LRTP and some of the work that we're doing during the development. And then ultimately, the last item on that being the LRTP vision. So what's the guiding vision and documentation for how they're going to steer the next year or so. So with that, I can leave these up here for a second if you want. We've got our visioning survey out that I just mentioned in both English and Spanish for consideration. Like I said, this will be done and completed. We'll take all the input by the 15th of June and hopefully have a pretty good swath. We've got our minimum standards that we need to meet and the number of people that need to take the survey. So any help that you could all to get the survey moving forward would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, it takes about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's not a long survey. It's fairly straightforward. We tried to limit the amount of open-ended questions and things like that. Ultimately, too, this is the visioning workshop I just mentioned. You can certainly register in advance. It's limited in space, but I think we've got plenty of spots right now.
You don't need to register 2 times. In that QR.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
More.
Yeah, so that's great. So yeah, we'll make sure we send this out to you all as well. We'll send out the presentations after today's meeting. And with that, that's all I've got on the LRTP front. Does anybody have any other questions right now? All right, here's David. He can give you a brief update on our budget.
More part for the end. So every 2 years, the MPO works on a 2-year cycle of its budget. So every 2 years, we have to create and submit our UPWP, which is our Unified Planning Work Program. It basically outlines what we project that we're gonna be doing in the next 2 years and what we're gonna be spending our funding on. Obviously, it's an agreement that's within DOT and us and the FHWA to basically get these funds allocated and worked out for the 2-year budget. So the MPO has 4 different 4 different line items, if you want to call it, in the budget. One is the PL allocation, which is the metropolitan planning funds. Those are mostly used for
Salaries.
Salaries, basically metropolitan planning is basically what the grant says. Is everything that has to do with the MPO and its day-to-day business to be able to do any planning for the area, for a jurisdiction, if you want to call it. We have the SU funds, which is the surface transportation funds. So you ask yourself, what does the MPO use to pay for the CMPs, the ATPs, the LRTPs, all these projects? Ryan and Nina have been talking about. That's where they come from. They come from this funding. And to cover any shortfalls or any balances or anything that has come up that may have been overseen, is what we use the local funds for. So the local funds come from both our jurisdiction and it's funds that they allocate to the MPO to cover, again, any items that may have come up last minute or if the MPO needs to help out with anything that they may need. One item that I didn't create a table for is our transportation disadvantage funds. Not to be confused with the county ones, which is what the counties use to provide their on-demand service for those disabled riders in their jurisdiction. This is more on the planning side. So how do we assist the counties, our both transit agencies in their day business with the planning of that system? So in general, that's it. It's very short, precise. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Everybody have questions? I had some questions and I think you've answered them, but, so in the full report that I'm looking at, not just yours, there's a lot of different, I'll call it spreadsheets or
Task.
test pages.
You're looking at the actual,
Test
the
pages.
actual program.
So I'm just trying to get a understanding. The budget, there's a budget for administration, what I'll call administration, that's salaries, building, I guess.
Correct.
All that. And then there's a budget for actual road projects that, because I've heard us talk about funding that will come directly from the MPO, right?
Yes.
And then there's the like this one that's showing up here, this is local, this is money from the localities that come to.
The two counties.
From the two counties.
From the two counties, that they go into the budget that help
Well,
everywhere.
well, also on, like, Dick mentioned, so historically, those local funds were contributed towards our FTA grant years and years ago was
As a
a
match.
contribution as a match. We continue this moving forward. Anything that's not eligible, or not ineligible, purchases and things like that, you wanna have refreshments at your events. Ineligible federal expense, those are things that our federal funds help allocate. We had an issue with our TDSP, there to the county, needed our assistance, they didn't have a consultant in on time. We're able to step in and leverage our local funds that they had provided to us and use our consultant that was already on board to step in and help them complete that on time. So those local funds are used in those types of situations where we're able to continue continuity, essentially continuity of operations, given anything that happens. And the SU funds you asked about, those that are up there now, those have historically been taken off the top. So as our region, we're averaging about $13 million a year now. We try to keep it, this $1 million is less than 10% for studies, 7%. So we're not taking a huge chunk of it. And we've really been able to prioritize and move a lot of our priorities forward by taking this out. This is a combination of all, like David mentioned, all of our studies are coming out of this. And PL is going to be used interchangeably. PL is all of our operational. So salaries, rent, anything that goes into how we operate.
We presented the forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So metro forecasting was the data that you had just briefly mentioned, that was done through PL.
That came out of that.
So that can be used for anything. Actually, we've tried to limit to basically planning. And as you may know, we have a new owner of this building. We are looking potentially to move out of this office into a larger space, given the demands of what we've heard from the new business owner here. They're running an aircraft maintenance shop out of here now with anticipation of potentially needing this entire building. So we'll be looking here in the future. So we've also incorporated with federal highway medium approval, some capital purchases to basically rebuild what we built here in another location. So that's in there built in as well. So it's a very, very concise budget. DOT's based on DOT's template. They've done a really good job over the last several years, redefining how the tasks operate and what we can use.
I think there's a bit of spot looking at it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Please come to film.
I will translate it, has to be for the county line.
If we're a two county agency, we have to stay.
University.
And yeah,
The sweet spot.
and we would like, I would say, admittedly, we probably initially thought we were gonna be able to move in here 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. We wanted this to be our boardroom as well, not large enough to do that. So ultimately, right now, we're still running our board meeting out across the street. The goal is, I think, is the space that we build out an entire conference room with built-in AV and everything that we need to run our board meetings and committees
With the growing of the needs of our jurisdictions, we're finding the need to grow our staff also. So, and with the new owners, a year ago, we thought about worst case scenario, we would take over the.
They didn't use
So
upstairs.
that's no longer available, so we're running out of space real quick.
Yeah, larger space. So that's generally the budget, like David mentioned, we're, 2-year cycle. I would say we're probably one of the most, have some of the most oversight of any, I would add of any local government, regional government. We've got federal highway, federal transit administration, and the department all reviewing our activities, and we're invoiced on a quarterly basis and reviewed ad nauseum. So we're in line, I think, with exactly what, like David mentioned, we're in a growth pattern. Like we similarly to every other MPO, saw increases are based on operational funds. That's the need to address the growing population. The state of Florida is growing at a rapid rate. We're not the same organization we were 10 years ago. Be that way, I guess, tomorrow. So continue to grow.
And to that end, I read, I think 99% of this.
You read more than a lot of people did.
Well, my point is, especially for anybody that's new, and I've only been on here a year and a half, 2 years, or whatever. This is very informative. I mean, it'll take you a while to read it. You can read a page, it's in-depth reading, but it really explains what the MPO does, in my opinion, and from what I've learned. Am I correct in saying that? Do you think?
Yeah. And all that,
It lays out the structure.
you have from free time, you can read all of the tasks that we're planning to do.
It breaks it to map of what we've done, what we did, and what we're doing for the next 2 years.
And who's here, who the employees are, who the staff is, it's all identified and who relates to who. So, I found it very informative.
It's a living document, it tends to change, basically every quarter. As we continue, as time moves on, we find that, okay, we thought we were gonna do this, we're gonna do that, or new items come in, so we're constantly updating that document.
And if you want to get a copy of it, I think you can click the link that was in the agenda Chris sent out.
Yep.
That's how I got to it, and just download it and,
Yeah, that's what we read. If you have any questions, let us know.
Have you told us before how many MPOs are there in the state?
27.
And
Maybe
size,
20.
not yet. No.
size wise, where do we rank as far as 7?
Yeah, so we're part of the big ones, not part of the middle. We're definitely not part of the small or the top of the middle.
We're
Top of the middle.
Big one for District 1.
all right, we're small. We're 7, we're the smallest of the big ones.
Right.
But we operate, if you look at the way we operate, you look at our POW, our funding, the way we allocate our fundings and what we're using it for, you won't see a lot of difference between us and Broward County.
That's good.
Except they have a $50 million.
Correct.
See how it is for us.
So that's one thing I was gonna bring up, and this is one of the conversations that Ryan and I may probably have every day is, how do we scale to the level where we need to scale, but how do we do it appropriately, and we're not just spending, where it's not sustainable. So, I mean, there's probably a conversation that we have every single day, of how do we do it, what are our needs, who do we need to bring in, what is the asset?
Yeah, that's a question we ask the jurisdictions and we ask the board, and I think that's the direction that they give us is, we grow within the means of what our agency is supposed to do. Mandates first and foremost, but where we can certainly help out our jurisdictions, and then that's future case of whether it's through grants or demand modeling or things like that, that we can certainly help to begin take on. That's what our goal is. So ultimately, like you said, the MPOs are an interesting kind of entity. We'll continue to kind of grow in that sense. So happy to take, any questions, feel free to read through the budget. Let us know if you got any questions. We're trying to be as absolutely transparent as possible when it comes to this stuff. Like I said, I don't think we couldn't really get away with a whole lot even if you tried. We follow the letter of the law to precisely, and I think we're taking the next steps, as David mentioned, with what we think we can do to better serve the region. So I appreciate the time today.
Any other questions? No, great, you have something,
Well, who's gonna do what's wrong with you? Well, let's not leave it open, so.
If you have something, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Go for it. We're going once around the table for the meeting to do. We do this at the end of the meeting. Everybody has a chance to say something.
Yeah, so, at the MPO, every few years, we do a volunteer recognition program just to recognize, a member on the Citizen Advisory Committee who has just been a dedicated member, consistent and coming to the meetings, and we really appreciate you. Appreciate everyone. It's really, like, it's really nice of you guys to come out here on Monday nights, you know? It's so awesome. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. But the person, we were going to present the certificate last week, but he was not here. And it goes to John Turan for 33 years of dedicated service.
Yeah, I guess he can just one meeting.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Picture and then you go around the table.
I gotta pick up my 41K now.
It's 21, man.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
we'll just, go. We start and go around the table.
I'm set, I'm good.
I want to 100% agree with the comment about roundabouts as far as being the safest way to have an intersection. I preach that all the time, but I have one problem with the roundabouts. The higher speeds over 40, 45 miles an hour and multiple lanes, when we talk about all the accidents that are caused, fatalities and serious accidents with pedestrians and bicycles, I do not think roundabouts are appropriate for bicycles and pedestrians when it's 2 lanes and over 45 miles an hour. I'd like to see your study that there's only been 1 fatality in a roundabout. The ones we're building here on some of the major roads, 41, elsewhere with people on bicycles and pedestrians, I can't believe that somebody's not gonna get seriously injured in a roundabout at those kind of speeds when there's multiple lanes.
Speed is an issue.
So.
Anything?
That's not.
Yeah.
Anything?
All right. Good.
Okay, thank you.
Are you a new member?
Yeah,
Next meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi, I'm new. I don't know, I just signed up like a couple months ago. I didn't know that like that this actually happened, but you know, I'm pleasantly surprised. You know, I'm glad to be a part of this, and I just gotta agree with Tom. You know, that roundabout near Ringling Bridge, that's a nightmare. And like,
That's what I was talking,
like,
that one right there.
like you brought up fender benders. I'm like, that's capital of fender benders right over
They
there.
have
Like,
changed I will say they have changed. I want to talk about modern roundabouts. Not traffic circles. And not,
Traffic
and some
circles.
roundabouts are designed really bad.
like the
But
one in
department
Paris.
Now has a protocol for them and an analysis, it's very specific for them where there's like a chicane that kind of goes into it, it slows you down. I'm really not,
I'm still pro roundabout. It's just.
and the pedestrians and bicyclists should be on the outside of the roundabout if they're done right. And I mean, done right, and that unfortunately doesn't always happen.
Yeah, all the ones that are not on state roads are also not state designed, so.
It's state designed, that's right.
University is.
Those are done by developers and by.
Yeah, be careful of the developer one.
May not be, you know, what you expect, so.
Yeah.
Not all roundabouts are created equal.
They draw those ones on MS Paint.
It should not be a full circle.
Circle, yes.
Right, it should be.
And my number 1 example is the one the developer paid for on 41 at Welland Park. That's gonna be an issue.
I mean, they all, admittedly, you know, Jack Aranda was one that was years documented.
Jack Brandon Menace is another one.
Your design flaw in Jack Aranda, it's been addressed, and the numbers of accidents have decreased dramatically. So let's not, they are living products too. There is ability to go back and adjust signage, ability to adjust geometry. It really needs it. I think signage is just as important. People need to know what lane they're traveling in. You see way too much crossing lanes and turn lanes and multi-lane roundabout. Stay in the lane that you're supposed to be in. Everyone, and so ultimately you need to slow down enough to make, if you're driving in the other lane and you're making the turn, you're going too fast.
Right.
So our traffic and our safety teams always say roundabouts are not a one size fits all solution. They are very specified to the environment, the approaches and, you know, your traffic counts. So.
And there are situations where a roundabout has been put in and it was not the right control.
Yeah.
So,
And I realize right of way is a big issue in roundabouts as far
yes,
as,
they do take a
not-
lot of right of way.
right,
They
so-
do.
They don't even know how to stop at 4-way stops. So
That's
some of these.
well, those are the issues we put roundabouts in.
Okay,
They are, I will add one more thing, they are a resilient solution, though. Think about when you
Yes.
do get storms and the power is
oh yeah,
out,
definitely.
but you still can use them, and that's why they're popular on coastal
Sure.
areas.
John, anything? I don't have anything. Anybody else? Neither, anyone? Okay, so our next meeting is on September 9th at 5 p.m. here, I guess. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.